Hey guys, and welcome to part 9 of this Selenium WebDriver with JavaScript video series on the LambdaTest YouTube channel. My name is Ryan, and as ever, I will be guiding you through this video, which this time is all about parameterization. Now, during this session, we are going to first look at what we actually mean by parameterization and how it can be used to enhance our testing. Then we're going to look at creating a brand new test and adding some parameters to that test. Then of course we'll run that test on the LambdaTest platform, and finally at the end we'll do a full review of everything that we've been through during this video. So first up, what is parameterization? So parameterization or parameterized tests are a really neat trick to enable us to use a single test and run it multiple times, but for different data inputs. So in our current test suite, we have multiple tests to add different to-dos to our to-do application. Now they work perfectly fine, but there is a lot of duplication in that code. So we have two tests which are very, very similar. The only difference is the input text that we're using to add our to-do. It would be great if we could remove some of that duplication and just reuse the same test, but instead pass in multiple values to it. And we can do that using parameterization. The advantage, as I mentioned, is that we get rid of some of the duplicate code that we're using. And that means if that code changes in the future, we need to change it in fewer places. So it makes the whole test suite more maintainable. Now, the other place we can use it in our test suite is to parameterize the browsers that we're testing our application on. So when we're using the LambdaTest platform, we've seen how we can use the capabilities to specify the browser and the operating system and the browser version and run our tests on that specific setup. Now, we could use parameterization to loop over our to-do test multiple times for different browsers, and therefore we don't have to run our test once and then change the capabilities and run it again. We can just allow those capabilities to be changed as our test is looped over multiple times. So in this video we're going to look at how we can use Mocha to parameterize our test. So for the purposes of this video, we're actually going to create a brand new test in our project. So our first test.js and second test.js are going to stay as they are, and we won't touch them. Instead, we'll create a brand new .js file with a brand new test in. Now, there are multiple ways we can achieve parameterization using JavaScript and the Mocha framework. There's several different packages that we could install which allow us to utilize parameterization and additional functionality in order to enhance our tests. Now, in this video, I'm going to use a simple approach using Mocha and JavaScript only. I'm not going to be installing any additional third-party packages. So what we will use is this for each functionality, which will wrap around our it block. So it will wrap around our test. And basically what we'll be doing is saying that for each of our browser and version and operating system combinations, rerun this test. And we won't have to do any manual changes after we've run our test on a single browser, it will automatically just loop through and run that test for as many combinations as we specify. So to get started, we can actually create a brand new test file. Let's call it param.test.js, and that's inside our test directory. And we can actually take what we've already got in our second test.js, because that's got a lot of the configuration already in. So I'll paste everything into our param.test.js test file. And now we're actually going to run our parameterized test on just this first it block. So I'm actually going to remove this second one to make everything a little bit more simple. Let's get rid of that. Perfect. So we've just got one test in here at the moment. And secondly, I'm going to remove our before each block and our after each block as well. Now I'm going to add this functionality directly into our if block. And the reason is that we need to be able to update our LT capabilities file, our capabilities here, on the fly. And when we use the for each block that we're going to use in a minute, it gets a little bit confused with the before each blocks. And it doesn't update it in the way that we need it to update. So as I mentioned previously, there are other third-party packages that you can use to achieve similar results. But because we're using the for each functionality, it's easier and a simpler way of showing you how this works is to remove our before each and after each block for this test. So I'll add our before each functionality back into our if block here, and at the end of our test we'll quit the browser. I'll copy that, and paste that there. Okay, so we now no longer need to use our before each and after each block here. So we've got our test, which will build the driver instance using the capabilities and run our test and close the driver. So first up, we need to specify the browsers and browser versions that we want to run our test on. And I've already done this, so I'm going to paste it here directly into our describe block above and outside of our test. And basically what we have here is a JSON array which contains 3 objects, and each object contains a browser, a version, and an operating system combination. So you can see that we've got Chrome version 93, Firefox 91, and another Firefox instance on version 90, all using the Windows 10 operating system. So now we have this list, we need to tell our test to rerun for each object in this array. So we could have more objects in here if we wanted to. If we wanted to run it on additional browsers, we can add new ones into here at any time. Equally, we can remove them from here if we no longer need them. And our test will just loop over for each object in here. So in this instance, our test will run 3 times, once for each of these. Now, in order to run our test multiple times, we're going to utilize the for each functionality that we saw in the Mocha documentation a few minutes ago. So we'll just type browsers in reference to the browser's array here. Dot for each, and then sort of brackets, and then inside here we need to pass in the values that we want to use inside our test. So we want to use the browser version, and the operating system. So we can pass each of those in. Browser, comma, B version for browser version, and OS for operating system. And then this is a function. Let's do that and open up the curly braces. Okay, so this is our for each block, and this needs to wrap around our it block. So at the moment they're completely separate, so we can do one of two things. You can either copy all of the code from your it block inside of this for each block, or you can move these brackets here to the bottom of your test. Like so. Make sure you delete them from here as well. So there we go. So now our it block is wrapped inside of our browser for each block here. So you can see that everything between these two is our test. So the final thing we need to do is to ensure that our test updates our capabilities before it builds the driver instance. So we've got our capabilities that we use to run our test on LambdaTest. And inside of our test, we want to update the values, much like we do here. So if you remember previously, we're using this line of code here to update the capabilities name, this value here, to the name of our particular test. So we're going to do the same now, but update the values for browser, platform name, browser version, and browser name. So these three values here. So we'll use the same syntax as we've used here. If I make my screen a little bit bigger so we can see. So we'll do LT capabilities dot capabilities dot, and first of all we will do platform name, and then we'll say that equals the OS, and then we just need to do that 2 more times. Like so. And this second one becomes browser name. And then browser version. Browser name comes from this browser value here. And then browser version comes from this B version value here, which ultimately comes from this set of values here. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is that update the capabilities, the platform name in capabilities to whatever OS version is passed in, depending on which values we're iterating through, and do the same for the browser name and the browser version. Just because we've moved this line inside of our it block, we also need to just change that. So just remove it from here and just delete that, and instead it becomes this test dot title instead of current test. Okay, so that's basically all we need to change. So we've got our list of browsers, we've added this for each function which wraps around our it block, and then when we go into the it block to run our test, before we build our new driver instance using these capabilities, we update the values here. So one other thing we could do is, just to make it a little bit clearer, we could actually change the name of our it block based on the values that we're passing in. So successfully adds a to do for browser, and we can do $ and curly braces, and then here we can pass in the variable that we're using. So browser, and then let's do another one of those for browser version, and then one more for OS. So now that when we run this test, it's actually going to print out the values of the browser and the browser version and the operating system as part of the title of the test, which will make it clearer if one of those tests fails, and make it clearer actually where it has gone wrong and which browser it's running in that particular time. Perfect. So we can save this and then we can run it and see what it looks like. So now that we've created our new parameterized test, we can go ahead and run it, and we'll have a look what it looks like on the console, and also we'll go onto the LambdaTest dashboard and have a look at the test there. So before I do that, if I just come over to my tests, and I'm actually going to switch headless to false, just so we can see what's going on when we get over to LambdaTest. So I'll save that, and then I can open up a new terminal and we can go ahead and run this. So instead of running everything, I'll just run our new param test.js file. So to do that, we just use npm test again, but this time I'm going to pass in this particular file using the relative path to that. So that is test, because it's in our test directory, /param test.js. Let's run that. So it's going to run exactly the same command as we've run previously, but just for our param test.js file. And it will now be running on the LambdaTest platform, and we should see the results of that printed in the console any second now. Perfect. So although we've only got one test inside our param test file, you can see that we've actually got 3 passing tests. And because we've updated the name to include the browser and the version and the operating system, you can see exactly what's run. So you can see that first it's run the test on Chrome, then it's run on Firefox 91, version 91, and then on Firefox version 90. And thankfully, all 3 of those tests have passed. So if we head over to the LambdaTest dashboard, you can have a look, and we should have some new tests here. So you can see that we've got one here for Firefox version 90, version 91, and then our Chrome version here. If I just drill down into one of these tests, you'll see the details. Here we go again, you can see what version everything's run on, and because we're not running headlessly, we've got the video as well, so we can see exactly what's going. You can see that's run on Firefox as opposed to this one here, which runs on the Chrome instance. So let's take a brief moment to review what we've done. We can basically split up the changes that we've made into 3 parts. Firstly, we added an array of all the different browser versions and operating systems that we wanted to run our test on. We added it directly to our described block. Secondly, we added this for each function and wrapped it around our it block. So our it block, our test, sits inside this for each function. And in that for each function, we passed in the values that we wanted to use. So it's basically saying for each browser and version and operating system in this list, I want you to run this test. And finally, we updated our test to set the capabilities for these values on the fly. So each time we run the test, we set the platform name and the browser name and the browser version based on the values that get passed in here. And then we build the new driver instance. So that is it for this video, where we've learned a neat little trick to parameterize your Mocha Selenium WebDriver test in JavaScript. Thank you for watching. If you have any queries or questions about what we've achieved in this video, then you can get in contact with me on Twitter using the handle BrianTester, or you can contact LambdaTest directly. Alternatively, leave a comment on the YouTube video and we'll get back to you with an answer. Now, if you're like me and want to learn more, then go and check out the LambdaTest blog, where there are new articles being added every week. There's so many different testing topics, including running Selenium WebDriver tests in JavaScript. If certifications is something you're interested in, then check out the LambdaTest website, where you can get a full list of the certifications that LambdaTest offer. Now that's it from me, so thanks again for watching this video, and of course I'll see you on the next one.